Rick and Morty vs. Dungeons & Dragons Issue 2. The story starts out with Summer asking what Rick was doing in the garage because it smells like nerds in there. Beth stands up for Rick, saying that it could be Morty's fault, and Summer dismisses it because since when does Morty make friends and party in the garage? Beth continues to blindly defend Rick and say that it might have been Jerry as she carries away the garbage, and even Summer cared enough to help out, carrying a bag of garbage behind her. I definitely prefer how Beth's written in the later seasons of the show because she's smart enough to be mad at Rick instead of always defending him, even when defending him makes her look like an idiot. Her being fed up with Rick is better writing. Summer says in this filler scene so far that Jerry only breaks in to steal canned soup and go through Beth's underwear drawer while she's at work. Oh, Summer means breaking into the house. So Jerry's divorced from Beth at this point. Jerry's smart enough to know how to break into a house? Wow. Jerry knows how to do that? The story cuts back to Rick and Morty, who are burned. An alien blames it on the fact that Rick messed with the Roy game instead of the fact that he was unplugged from it when it was on. Then the green alien is told to plug that machine back in because nobody dies at blips and chits. The blue alien thanks them for helping focus test their new campaign about the dangers of rogue science, and tries to distract all the witnesses by giving them unlimited chits for the next 24 minutes. Then the blue alien summons a squid monster named Gary, saying that he comes with summoned and thus his blood debt is fulfilled. The blue alien tells Gary to give these vouchers to their special focus group participants. Finally, just now does he realize that this is Rick. Really? He didn't look at him in all that time? He and Morty are the only humans that come here. You'd think they'd be kind of famous. He gets something out of Rick's coat that shows off a hologram of Rick, and reveals in a panic that Rick's a Platinum Medallion elite member. So just because of that, they decide to revive Rick and Morty. Also, the squid monster throws Rick and Morty into their house and startles Beth and Summer. Morty tells Rick he's done with D&D after all of that, and he says he's not learning anything and there weren't any dungeons or dragons. Beth makes a stupid joke repeatedly, and out of nowhere, Summer reveals that she plays D&D with her friends every Tuesday. Morty had better logic than the writer did, and naturally assumed that they talked about boys instead. The show never indicated this. Summer says that she plays board games with her friends, and sometimes D&D. Of course Summer's a rogue. Rick wants to play the game with Summer, and she enthusiastically agrees. I guess her being open-minded to fantasy like D&D makes sense because she already knows Rick, and she wants to adventure with him more. It still comes out of nowhere for her. And Beth agrees to play if there's booze in those dungeons, and apparently there are. I feel like this is only happening because it's a D&D focused arc. Morty says he'll give Rick one more chance tomorrow night, even though he wants to take 10 showers and burn his clothes. Summer tells Rick, who's skeptical all of a sudden, that she just sat in on a game once. She says that she doesn't play tennis either, but still knows the rules. And everyone knows about D&D these days. The only reason Morty took so long was because he's always being taken to space. Yeah, this is definitely happening because it's a D&D arc. I never heard anything about D&D in my high school. Meanwhile, after Rick is 45 minutes late, he shows up to Morty through a portal, and they go to a portal to another planet, where Rick's showing them a hard light simulation complex, and he explains that it fills the air with trillions of nanoprojectors, so hologram projectors. I don't see how light can be solid though, he should just say force field. That's the closest there is. Rick says that Morty doesn't appreciate his work. He found a dimension with a deviant chronotron field, and then used the time dilation effect to build this. How? Well, while it's been one night for Morty, Rick spent the past 4 months building that holodeck for 3rd edition D&D. I love that, it makes so much more sense. It's amazing the level of dedication he has to his grandson. This is all for helping Morty, and he did this for months without stopping. Rick says this holodeck is a whole world with cities and ecosystem. All in that tiny little building? The artist should have drawn it better. And everyone around him assumes the AI running this place will try to kill them. Even Beth. And Rick's safety protocols are immediately doubted. Makes them smarter than the people of Star Trek. I mean, I heard that in Star Trek people nearly get killed by holodecks all the time. So this is smart writing. While Rick wants to be a wizard, Beth wants something more hitting things than drinking, so she's given the role of barbarian. That's interesting. Summer gets to be the rogue, even though Morty needs to learn rogue stuff. She tells him that he'll learn from watching her. Finally, Summer's costume is lampshaded, and she calls it paint. She says that her vital organs are exposed, and she can't backstab somebody if they're too busy staring at her. So she gets another outfit. And then Rick tells Morty he can't double dip on classes because it's a dick move. How? If anything, it's a dick move to refuse to let someone play the class they want. If that's a rule in D&D, that legitimately pisses me off. Fighting games have let you play as the same character as each other since forever. Hell, even Final Fantasy I, which was all about ripping off D&D. Even that let you choose multiple characters of the same class. And Rick can program the game to be however he wants. You don't want Final Fantasy I to look like an improvement. And Morty needs to be a rogue at this point. I hope a dungeon master can choose to get rid of that rule, because like, he's the dungeon master, he's in charge. Like, the whole point of this was to help out Morty, so you'd think he'd let him be a rogue. Rick tells Morty off for even considering being a bard. This kind of thing happens a lot, his disdain for bards. So that explains why I forgot that he actually told Morty that his first character was a bard. And if I forgot, that explains why Morty forgot too. He tells the computer to activate a specific protocol and says that if he hears one "hey nani nani" out of him, they'll all die, which is pretty extreme. Well, he did hate a character who said that in that stupid Sonic Universe arc who wasted a ton of time with singing, so I'm with Rick here. And threatening is one thing, doing something is another. He probably assumes that just threatening him will get Morty not to say that. So Morty's made a cleric and is told to be their healer. And then they immediately go into a fight with monsters without Rick learning his lesson from last time and teaching Morty how to heal first. So how are they supposed to not get hurt in here? It's them fighting things, even if the things are just force field holograms. Getting hit with a force field hard enough would still injure you. Rick puts his hand on Morty's shoulder and says that he got a dungeon just fine. Beth blocks an arrow with a shield and says that could have killed her. Rick expects me to believe that she's invincible unless she gets unlucky with a critical hit. He should say that they're all surrounded by invisible force fields. Then he says that it's just a game, so while it'll sting if she gets hit, I guess because of the programming of the force fields around her, this place has safety protocols, which should all work perfectly because he's the smartest man ever. As Morty's getting bitten and getting smacked at by monsters, Rick tells Beth that she's smart and has D&D in her blood. Then she attacks a monster for looking a bit like Jerry, not that I could tell. After Summer defeats the bad guys with a sneak attack, they run away with some valuable loot. I'm sure it'd only be valuable in the holodeck because it's just holograms. After we see them fight monsters, Morty opens a chest and gets put on fire, and his family fortunately feels bad for him. Then we see Morty heal Beth. Then out of nowhere, Rick's family gets sick of the game and says it's terrible. Beth complains that's literally just fighting, but wouldn't you want that? She was having fun. The whole reason she wanted to join in was because she wanted to hit stuff. But the point of the story is, endless grinding isn't fun. That's like the first Dragon Quest. Morty asks why they all smell like burning dog hair while Rick's still clean. Rick says that's all about experience. Morty asks what's the point of being a healer if your party wizard is an all-powerful immortal. Beth says that Rick's cheating. Obviously there would be a point being a healer because he needs to heal the rest of his family. Rick says that's ridiculous and there is no cheating in D&D. Wouldn't he know that he's cheating? I mean, he is a wizard. I would expect a wizard to have an advantage. And that's what he is outside of D&D too. What else is he supposed to be? Of course a wizard would be able to affect his own stats. After Rick's family quits the game, he takes his frustration out on the random monsters and quickly gets bored and lonely sitting on a chair and doing nothing. What, did he get rid of every monster in the game? Jerry goes home. Rick walks through a portal to a house with a banner saying "Welcome Home, Heroes," which has his family dancing to music and playing cards in it. There's a ton of wasted time here with nothing to talk about. A lot of dialogue that's pointless. Beth says that she beat some bad guys that were killing the local livestock, which is why there's so much joy in the village. And Rick, who's obviously only here because he gets lonely without his family, brags that he got some MacGuffins and is ignored. Beth says that Morty cured the innkeeper's daughter of sickness, so they get their meals for free. Rick says they were raking in real loot back in the dungeon and could buy this town 10 times over. Beth's just happy that Morty's dancing. Rick doesn't understand and is mad that Beth wants to help the locals again. I don't see why, because the help just involves more fighting. He should at least say that the locals are all fake because they're just holograms in AI anyways. Beth just really wants to feel better about herself by helping people. Beth got sick of fighting, and yet she's fine with fighting to help the locals. That's just more of the same thing. She tells Rick that he can only come along if he stops cheating. I don't know why she'd care. I guess she's just that jealous of him? And he presses a button on his wrist to humor her. Beth wants to relax and lampshades that they never talk about her mom. Rick's interrupted, probably from complaining that she left him. An emergency protocol is initiated. They get surrounded by blue light and sent back home. I guess because Morty was about to sing and play music like a bard, which he was very clearly told not to do. To be fair, I can't imagine Morty is able to sing well. So why wouldn't Rick want to avoid that? I guess we're supposed to believe it makes sense that he tried to do it because he was really having fun. To the point where he was motivated enough to try to sing and play music. Because normally I think he'd be too insecure to think he could do a good job. The story ends with Jerry greeting them in the garage. Actually, there's a like I said, the story ends here. This issue is about Rick bringing his family to a holodeck world on another planet where they get to play D&D. And after fighting monsters, they get bored of endlessly fighting through dungeons, and then proceed to keep fighting anyways, except it's to help the locals instead. Even though the locals aren't real, they're just force-field holograms controlled by AI. But even that's enough to make them feel good about doing the fighting they got bored of. It came out of nowhere that they got bored of the fighting. Maybe the montage wasn't long enough to get the point across. All I saw was Morty and Beth getting hurt once. And they get hurt in the fighting that they did on their own anyways. And then they're yanked out of the simulation automatically because Morty tried to go bard. And Rick and Morty survived the arcade because there's no dying in blips and chits, and Rick's a platinum member. So it just happened last issue for a cliffhanger. I love that the obvious cliche where the AI goes crazy and tries to kill them was averted after being predicted, because it establishes just how smart Rick actually is. If it was Eggman, I bet the predictable thing would have happened. Instead, they completely avert what seems like spiteful nonsense that, oh, the holodeck would inevitably turn on you, because the writer is jealous that they made a holodeck and wants to punish the characters for having something that man isn't meant to have. It makes sense someone smart enough to make a holodeck wouldn't actually have it turn on them. Nothing creative is being done with the D&D stuff, as usual. It's just stereotypical fantasy stuff to the max. I can't even enjoy the fight scenes because there's gore. I like Rick and Morty because it's interesting,